What was that thing you said, Abe Foxman, director of the Anti-Defamation League? You know that really dramatic thing you said in the speech you recently made in Palm Beach, where you blamed the internet for the recent rise in anti-Semitism around the world, and how you couldn't remember ever being so seriously concerned about the safety and security of your grandson because of it? Well, what do you know, Abe? Miracles do exist. There is actually something upon which you and I can agree. You see, I too have never been so afraid for the future of my progeny, and the source of my worry also stems from the recent rise in anti-Semitism. No, Abe, I am not Jewish, thank God, for if I were, then chances are better than none that I would find myself in the clutches of evil, conspiring men such as you, who are always drumming up new ways of enriching and empowering themselves by getting their own people into trouble. You see, the reason I am alarmed at the recent rise in anti-Semitism is because I am a real, living, flesh and blood Semite, Abe, unlike you and those for whom you presume to speak. As such, my children are also Semitic, and if I am so blessed, my grandchildren will also be as well. Do not let my non-Semite sounding name fool you. There is more Semitism in one of my eyelashes than what you and your people could possibly dream of possessing in your wildest, most uninhibited fantasies. My relatives come from the Middle East, unlike yours, which come from the ghettos of either Europe or Russia. My relatives are the ancient Philistines and Phoenicians, whereas yours, and those of 95% of the world's Jewish people, come from the ancient kingdom of Khazaria in southern Russia. My skin is dark and my eyes are dark and almond-shaped, unlike your features, which are fair and white in appearance. I grew up hearing dialects of the Aramaic language that was spoken by Jesus and his apostles, and I ate the food that has been part of that region for thousands of years. Your people, on the other hand, grew up with absolutely nothing that can connect you with the language, food, or more importantly, the customs of the region, which traditionally have been those of accommodation, hospitality, cooperation, and concern for their fellow man. So you see, Abe, you and your fellow travelers are not Semites in even the most remote sense, which is just one of the many reasons your presence has been rejected in the same Middle East that you invaded a century ago. You are foreigners, and even more important, collectively, you are like a hostile virus that the real Semitic body, in order to protect itself, is trying to vomit out. You fit in with the Semitic environment as well as a fish does in a bird's nest. This business of your people being Semites is a lie that you have foisted upon the world in order to buy or steal political advantage that you cannot get through normal channels that are legal, fair, or righteous. And you know this all too well, attributing the hostility of the real Semitic peoples of the Middle East to the presence of haughty, obnoxious, violent, rapacious, thieving people such as you in their land is like the European accusing the indigenous peoples of America who warned against them of being anti-American. The ugly truth is that anti-Semitism is a term that you have absconded for yourselves, but in reality, when applied to you, it is a fraud, and on several levels. The proper term that should be used in describing what seems to be the never-ceasing state of woe is me for the Jewish people, whether these woes are to be found in the Middle East or wherever, is anti-Jewish or anti-Judaic. But you can't allow that to be said now, can you? Abe, no, you can't. It's like calling the hellish process of chopping up an unborn baby murder or infanticide. It's too precise, too honest, and it conjures up too many mental images that cause the human soul to revolt against it, and so it is to be renamed something sterile and misleading, such as termination of pregnancy. Likewise, you cannot say anti-Jewish when describing the organic hostility that exists on the part of a growing number of people around the world against you and your agenda, because it is too precise and not confusing enough. Deception is the main weapon in your arsenal, something which you and your people proudly state in the motto of your intelligence agency Mossad and its various counterparts, including your own ADL. You may have fooled a good number of people around the world with this shell game you're operating that uses confusing technical language, but I, as well as a growing number of others around the world, have your number. No, the real reason that you have to blame all of this persecution on anti-Semitism is because you need to distract people from what the real causes of the troubles are. You see, you can't say anti-Jewish because then people might begin to realize that being Jewish is not a racial thing any more than as being Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, or whatsoever. Being Jewish is a mindset and the behavior that accompanies it. And what this means is that it is fair game for scrutiny and criticism, just as it should be. Obviously, you and your peeps feel this way, given your demonstrated willingness to do it on about 100 million billion occasions in viciously attacking the religious precepts of Christians and Muslims. By comparison, consider this. What Christian is permitted to claim some kind of racial qualification for himself in order to justify his behavior? Likewise, with any Muslims, any Hindus, Buddhists, or whoever. No, only you Jews are allowed to do this, which is just another characteristic of what being Jewish is all about, which can be summed up simply with the following statement. Screw you. We can do whatever we want, and don't you interfering Gentiles utter a word of complaint about it, or else. More than that, though, what you and your cohorts seem to fear by using the more appropriate term of anti-Jewish in describing the fever that is being raised in the body of mankind is the amnesia that has gripped a good portion of the people of the Western world will wear off when they hear anti-Jewish, and then they will begin doing that thing that you and your agenda cannot afford to have take place, which is this. They will begin to remember. Yes, when they begin the business of tracing their steps backwards, they will see that in instance after instance throughout the history of persecution for the Jewish people, that there were perfectly explainable reasons, and that they were and are inextricably tied to aberrant Jewish behavior. More importantly, though, they will remember what took place over 2,000 years ago in a tiny town known as Jerusalem, where your forefathers plotted and schemed and used all the magic they had in their black bag of dirty tricks to have an innocent man put to death who dared to speak out against the same kind of obnoxious, callous, haughty Jewish behavior that you yourselves exhibit today. But as I said before, you can't allow that now, can you, Abe? No, the Jewish people and their historically documented ugly behavior must remain blameless. The reason for the friction between them and non-Jewish people has to be blamed on something else, just another false flag operation for which the Jewish mindset is famous for creating. And this is the reason why the spike in anti-Semitism has to be blamed on the internet, doesn't it, Abe? No. The fact that the Jewish people of Israel and their agents spread throughout the Western world have murdered 250,000 innocent Palestinians, 2 million Iraqis, tens of thousands of Lebanese, 3,000 Americans on 911, and that these nice Jewish folks are now maneuvering the next phase of this Judaic war to take place against Iran has nothing to do with the unfriendly feelings that are growing on the part of non-Jews towards Jews. The fact that the vitality of the Western world has been sapped dry through the vampiric Jewish stranglehold over its economic, political, cultural, religious and academic sectors, and that fact that you and your people brazenly lie about it has absolutely no bearing on this rise in anti-Jewish feelings. I guess that innocent man your forefathers put to death was right after all. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, or, as he put it, a leopard does not change its spots. You really don't learn from history, do you? Even after 2,000 years of trying to implement that which is impossible, and then dealing with the disaster that inevitably follows in its wake, you will still try, using leeches to cure sickness, and having a pile of dead bodies as proof that it is quackery is not enough to convince you that it is not a viable system. One more time. Just one more time. We know it will work. It has to. No, Abe. The internet is not to blame, and you know this. The reason why the Jewish people have been despised is because they have acted despicably. The reason non-Jews have possessed and are now more and more possessing an organic mistrust or dislike of Jews is similar to the reason sheep have an organic mistrust of wolves. You and the various other tentacles of this Zionist octopus have plunged the world into chaos, and the rest of the world knows it all too well. Even if certain sectors of the world, namely the Christian West, are slow to catch on. The fingerprints of you and the rest of the boys in the hood can be found all over the scene of the crime. And rather than admit your guilt, you have to make the ridiculous claim that someone else with identical fingerprints came and did this thing and did it all to frame you. And the reason for doing it was this thing known as anti-Semitism. And the internet is being used to facilitate it. So I guess what you are really saying between the lines is that the internet has to be shut down, is that right? In the same way as free speech is illegal in certain parts of the world whenever Jews and their agenda are discussed in an intelligent, honest way, the internet also has to be regulated, and this is the reason why you and your vile, traitorous organization, the ADL, is working feverishly with spineless lawmakers in the US to deny the American people their rights under the First Amendment. But that has always been your way, hasn't it, Abe? Your forefathers tried to shut up John the Baptist when he warned the people about you, and when he refused to cooperate, you had him arrested and beheaded. Then it was Jesus, and we all know what happened to him, followed by Stephen, Paul, Peter, and the others, and then, of course, we cannot forget about what happened in those countries that fell victim to your Jewish cousins in communist Russia and Eastern Europe, where the first law enacted was the one forbidding anti-Semitic activity. In the meantime, thousands of priests were arrested and murdered, Christian churches were burned down or used for livestock stables, and when it was all finished, the lives of 66 million people were erased. You just have to make felons out of your enemies, and particularly those who tell the truth about you, as it is the only way you can win. Rather than change your behavior and learn to get along with others instead, you have to nurse that criminal mindset and the accompanying criminal behavior that comes as a package deal with being Jewish. You fear for the safety and security of your grandson? What a sick, sick joke, Abe. Your grandson is already protected. When he comes of age, he will walk into a world of privilege and power, and if he gets himself into trouble, and the other kids on the playground come after him because he cheated them out of something, he can flee to that nuclear-armed hideout custom-made for all the other Jewish crime lords, Israel. In the meantime, I and my children live in a country where the daily debate is how imperative it is that the sand niggers and Hajis be wiped out. The chosen people of Israel have developed a form of biological warfare that is racially discriminating against people of the Arabic or Semitic ethnicity. Just more proof that the Jews are not Semitic. Every day a real flesh and blood Semite is beat up or harassed, and no one knows or does anything about it. On the contrary, those who are the principal cause of all this genuine anti-Semitism, meaning the non-Semitic, anti-Semitic Jews who are blowing things up and blaming it on the real Semites, do so with impunity. People are wrong about you, Abe. You and your cohorts. You are not dual loyalists. Your loyalty lies with your Jewish gang and with your Jewish ghetto, meaning Israel. As such, you have no loyalty to the people of America or Europe or anywhere else for that matter, and therefore cannot be considered a traitor. You are worse though, Abe. You and all the others with whom you work in tandem. You're a spy, working in the service of a hostile foreign government, responsible for perpetrating acts of war against the people of the United States and elsewhere, and as such, you and all the others in your gang, AIPAC, JDL, WJC, JINSA, etc., all deserve to be treated as spies, which is to be executed publicly and with as much pain as possible. In the meantime, until that wonderful day arrives, you might as well get used to the rise in anti-Semitism, as you disingenuously put it. As long as you and your people insist upon living in a state of war with everyone else around you, you will be disliked, shunned, exiled, mistrusted, and despised, just as your forefathers have been in every locale they have gone.